Okay, guys, um, we are live. So tonight I'm just gonna do just a quick reading of the book on Resistance to Evil by Force by Ivan Ilyin. And yeah, I'm just thinking it would be nice to do a book reading once in a while, then maybe do a discussion. And I'll try to be as brief as possible, and I won't do a big discussion tonight. I myself am tired, but I decided, I got nothing else to do, so I'll just do this quick book reading, and it's supposed to be a good book, so yeah, on Resistance to Evil by Force, and video is called Part One, and it's basically, I guess you could say, Chapter One. But yeah, so in the videos, if I continue reading the chapters from this book, I'll just probably say, I'll probably in the description write down Part One. So yeah, and if you guys want to help support me and my channel, the donations and the super chats, they're through Streamlabs, and the link should be right there in the description. It should be in the chat area as well. So if you guys want to, help support the channel, you could always go through Streamlabs and try to help out from there. So yeah, let's give this a try. So I'll do about the author, but I won't do the whole about the author. I'll probably do a few pages, and then I'll probably do chapter one. Chapter one's pretty short. So I'm just gonna start in a second. Let's see, interesting. So we got one viewer so far, right? The live chat. All right, hold on. Let's see if I could try to send you guys the link, because it looks like the link to the super chats is not available for some reason. That's weird. Okay, Streamlabs. Okay, so copy. I'm gonna send that into the stream. Okay, refresh the chat. That's interesting. So the chat thing should be available. I updated that right now. Okay, okay, I see it. Yeah, so it's working. I got that all updated, so all right. It says sign into chat, but I'm pretty sure get live chat right here. Yeah, okay, so everything's ready. So if you guys want to donate through Streamlabs, and if you guys want to do super chats, greatly appreciate that. And so let's begin. Let's do about the author. First, I'll do a quick intro about the book. It was translated by K. Benoit. Okay, published in Russian as «О сопротивлении злу силою». Privately published in Berlin, 1925. So I'm assuming both in Russia and Berlin it was 1925. And then privately published in Berlin in 1925. Republished by Zaria, London, and Canada, 1975. So first published 1925, and then republished in 1975 says Zarya. I'm assuming means Zaria. Okay, so Zarya, London and Canada, 1975. And that was in Russian. Then the English translation, published by Taxiarch Press, 2018. That's the English translation. And it was translated in 2018 by K. Benoit. So, yeah, it's pretty new. It's a pretty new translation here. Printed by CreateSpace, 2018. Zvolen, Slovakia / London, England. Okay, so interesting. So yeah, like the Russian was translated. The Russian was published twice, 1925, and then republished in 1975. English was translated in 2018, and parts of it in Slovakia, the other part of it in England. And so here we go. We have this here available. And basically, it's available on Amazon, Thrift Books, other websites that sell books. And the book is in memory of Pyotr Ivanovich Sokolov, painter, graphic artist, and children's illustrator, executed in 1937 by Soviet authorities. Okay, The Thinker by Mikhail Nesterov. The portrait of Ivan Ilyin against the Russian landscape was commissioned in 1922, the year he was exiled. So, if you guys can see this right here, that's a portrait of Ivan Ilyin. Oh, here's a photo right here in the back of the book. There's Ivan Ilyin right there. All right, great. We now have 2 viewers. So glad you guys could join me in this book reading. Okay, so let's do this. On Resistance to Evil by Force by Ivan Alexandrovich Ilyin. About the author. Ivan Alexandrovich Ilyin, born 1883, died 1954. He was born in Moscow to an aristocratic family of some renown. His father, Alexander Ivanovich Ilyin, was the son of the royal palace commandant, while his mother, Caroline Louise née Schweikert von Stadion, was a noblewoman of Germanic origin. The young Ivan, one of 5 boys, excelled in high school, achieving a prestigious gold medal, and began studying law and philosophy at the University of Moscow in 1901. Graduating 5 years later at the age of 23, he resolved to enter teaching as a profession and married Natalia Vokach, born 1882, died 1962. She was a fellow graduate student and art historian. He gained employment lecturing on law at his native university in 1910, and the first of his writings were published that same year. As he continued to further his own education, he expressed not only an interest in law and philosophy, but the still young field of psychology, joining the Moscow Psychological Society. Okay, so he's interested in law and philosophy and the brand new field of psychology. At the end of 1910, he would depart with his wife for Europe, visiting Germany, Italy, France, Switzerland, and Austria to study the latest trends in his fields of interest. The outbreak of the First World War in 1914 found Ilyin awkwardly situated in Vienna. When he returned to Russia expecting to be drafted into the reserve army, he was curiously informed that contrary to the law, the commanders were under orders not to take any ranking university lecturers. Thus, throughout the war, he continued to teach and work his master's thesis on the philosophy of Hegel. When the February Revolution occurred, Ilyin joined most Russians in cautiously welcoming it as a chance to renew the Russian state, and took part in local political activism. However, when via those channels it was revealed to him that a large portion of the propaganda which precipitated the Tsar's abdication, that the Tsarina had betrayed the country to her native Germany, had been entirely fabricated, a creeping sense of dread filled him. Okay, like I'll do a little pause right here. So, yeah, like a lot of Russian intellectuals at the time, he probably was, he fell for the propaganda about the Tsarina, the Empress. Because she was German, she betrayed Russia to Germany, and she was secretly spying on behalf of the Germans. None of that was true. Old modern documents reveal this. Even several pro-communist historians in Russia that I would listen to, even they would say, yeah, like that's all BS. She was never a spy for Germany. So even communist historians, even if when they admit that that the Tsarina never was a spy, that she was never a spy for Germany, that says something. That says a lot right there. So yeah, but it looks like Ivan Ilyin at the time, like he said, I think it says right here, when the February Revolution occurred, Ilyin joined most Russians in cautiously welcoming it as a chance to renew the Russian state. So he was probably more like a reformer, so probably not completely liberal, probably just a little bit liberal, but yeah, but like most intellectuals, he probably thought, okay, this revolution is needed. We would probably win the war a lot quicker if we simply just renew the state of Russia. And he's more moderate, I guess, based on what it says right here, that he cautiously welcomed it as a chance to renew the Russian state. Let's not forget that there were two revolutions in 1917. People always focus, they hyper-focus on the Bolshevik Revolution, and people forget about the Revolution of February. And a lot of I guess you could say somewhat center-right people were very welcoming of this revolution, unfortunately. And I guess he realized his mistake when he found out that the information about the Tsarina being a spy was fabricated. Yeah, because it says right here, a creeping sense of dread filled him. So, like, sure enough, the moral bankruptcy of the squabbling bourgeois, Kerenskyites, Democrats gave way to the nightmare of the October Revolution when Vladimir Lenin's Bolsheviks seized control of the government in Petrograd. So yeah, right here, so Kerensky and his bougie liberals basically just kept leading Russia towards destruction. And like, I guess you could say, like, the first couple weeks, things probably seemed okay at first, right? It's revolution, it's something new, we're not used to this, but we'll fix this, right? And the longer the revolution lasted, the longer the provisional government would postpone any actual true government, the more chaos was abundant in Russia at the time, and it eventually led to the Bolshevik Revolution. And Ilyin, as a contemporary of that time, was noticing this. He was noticing. He was noticing some things. So yeah, like a creeping sense of dread filled him. So he's probably having some, I guess you could say, buyer's remorse. He thought, okay, let's welcome this revolution. Okay, if the Tsar wants to abdicate, whatever. Let's just figure out a way how to reform Russia, and boom, things just get worse. And he noticed that Kerensky's regime was just making things worse. Right, guys, just give me 1 second. Right. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm just gonna send a quick message before I continue reading. Okay, so let's continue reading this. Let's go back to the Kerenskyite part. Sure enough, the moral bankruptcy of the squabbling bourgeois Kerenskyite Democrats gave way to the nightmare of the October Revolution, when Vladimir Lenin's Bolsheviks seized control of the government in Petrograd. Petrograd, for those of you guys who don't know, it was the renamed city of St. Petersburg. So St. Petersburg, during the First World War, it sounded obviously way too Germanic, and Russian patriotism at the time was so overhyped that they literally changed the name of the city from St. Petersburg, Sankt Peterburg, St. Petersburg, became Petrograd. And Petrograd, grad is an old Russian way of saying city, and Pyotr, Peter, city of Peter, Petrograd, city of Peter. Well, like Stalingrad, Stalingrad, city of Stalin. But Stalin was not in power at the time. The Bolsheviks would come in power later on. But yeah, Petrograd was the name of St. Petersburg eventually, unfortunately. When the Bolsheviks would take over, they would still call it Petrograd, but then when Lenin dies, in honor of Lenin, they would rename Petrograd to Leningrad, city of Lenin. Cringe. But yeah, let's keep reading. So yeah, the whole country was put to the flame of a brutal civil war. At the time, many, including the revolutionaries, believed this state of affairs would be short-lived. But Ilyin was less sure. As the months rolled by, he denounced the revolution in public speeches, glorified those who had died fighting against it, and declared that while the anti-communist White Army closed in from the rimlands of the empire, an internal resistance was required to salvage what the Bolsheviks had not already destroyed. He courageously published in newspapers and pamphlets his eulogy. Sorry, guys, I'll start again. He courageously published in newspapers and pamphlets his eulogies for the whites during the course of the conflict, and this led to constant harassment from the fledgling communist government, which ransacked his property on more than one occasion. So, for those of you who don't know, the whites they're the opposition force. So, the Russian Civil War was not really a monolith. Yes, the two major factions fighting each other were the whites and the reds. And what's interesting when you study the reds, at least from 1918 up until 1919, the reds, they were not this singular monolith, and the whites were definitely not a singular monolith. They had so many different right-wing ideologies. They even had a bunch of left-wing ideologies mixed into them. So the whites and the reds, they were just the two major factions fighting in the Russian Empire, or what was known as the Russian Empire at the time. But there were other multiple mini factions fighting each other, and not just each other. They would also fight the Reds and the Whites, but the two major factions were the Whites and the Reds. And yeah, so the Whites were just the big major resistance to the Reds, who eventually would be mostly communists, because at first it was a combination of Bolsheviks and the social revolutionaries and a bunch of other left-wing groups, but eventually the Bolsheviks would start pushing out all these other left-wing groups, and only the communists would would seize power amongst the Reds. Unfortunately, the White Guards, they did not have such unification. But yeah, let's keep reading. Okay, so the fledgling communist government ransacked Ilyin's property on more than one occasion. Unperturbed, he achieved his master's degree and further was made a doctor of state sciences in 1918. So imagine this, like you have a civil war going on in the country, and you still finish both your master's degree and you also finish your PhD in this in this chaos. So he became a doctor of state sciences in 1918. It is a marvel that Ilyin managed to evade execution, as he was arrested by the Soviet authorities 6 times on suspicion of counter-revolutionary activity before being condemned to exile aboard the so-called philosopher's streamer. And so he was exiled in 1922. That's post-Civil War. But yeah, he was arrested 6 times under suspicion of counter-revolutionary activity. In every release from custody, he had his loyal friends at the influential university faculty to thank, and to some extent his renowned work on Hegel, which attracted the begrudging admiration of Lenin himself. Interesting. Despite these close calls, Ilyin was purged from the university faculty in 1921, as were all non-party members. It was a year of tragedies, as his father also passed away, and the White Army was effectively routed from its last strongholds in a surprising victory for the Bolsheviks. In 1922, apparently unable to bring themselves to bury the brightest philosophical minds of the nation, but also no longer willing to tolerate their enduring dissent, the Soviet authorities ordered more than 160 intellectuals, including Ilyin, to board one of the 2 German ships, his being the Oberbürgermeister Haken in Petrograd, bound for Stettin, and never to return to their homeland. In exile, Ilyin traveled extensively, attacking the Bolshevik regime in thunderous speeches at universities across the continent in Germany, Belgium, France, Switzerland, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and Latvia. Latvia at the time was not part of the Soviet Union, so that's why he was able to go to Latvia. Germany was his primary abode before the outbreak of the Second World War, where he held a lecturer's post at the Russian Scientific Institute in Berlin. In addition, he was a member of the London School of Slavonic Studies. He built up an extensive network of contacts among the exiled white forces of Baron Pyotr Wrangel, acquiring the nickname Bely, meaning white, owing to the belizna, literally whiteness, of his political views. Okay, so he acquired the name Bely, owing to the belizna of his political views. So basically he got the nickname White, and because of the whiteness of his political views. Now, the whiteness that is talking about here, it's not like the whiteness that we would talk about today, right? It's a different understanding. It's about the white movement, about the movement of the White Guards resisting the communists in Russia. And so, basically, I guess what they're implying here is that he's an extreme right-winger. I guess you could say he's very, very right-winged. It is fair to say Ilyin was among the chief ideologists of the politically active Russian diaspora, and his trust in Russia's rebirth would later inspire the Soviet Union's most prolific exiled critic, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, born 1918, died 2008. After working as a freelance journalist reporting on early developments in fascist Italy, he launched his own highly popular magazine, Russky Kolokol. It means Russian bell. It was launched in 1927. His lectures, sometimes delivered in fluent German, were not exactly conducive to the designs of Adolf Hitler's National Socialist regime, which came to power in 1933, and repeatedly attempted to bribe him into becoming its propagandist among the émigré population. Ilyin refused these solicitations. While he had given great praise to fascism as an emergent anti-communist ideology, he had been deeply critical of its totalitarian party basis, its hostility to the Christian religion, and, in the German case, its biological racial chauvinism. Like many other scholars who criticized these populist movements from the right, Ilyin suffered consequences and was dismissed from his teaching post in 1934. So, back in Russia, the Bolshevik communists, they basically get him fired from his teaching position, and then in 1934 you basically have the German National Socialists basically do the same thing. Yeah, because being right-wing does not necessarily mean just being National Socialist. Unfortunately, a lot of National Socialists are National Socialists because they assume that in order to be right-wing, you only have to be a National Socialist, without realizing there are so many other right-wing paths and right-wing ideologies you could take. There doesn't have to be just one. But that's like a whole different topic for a different live stream. But yeah, so yeah, in 1934, he loses his teaching position in Germany for not being fully on board with the regime of German Mustache Man. Tragedy continued to strike Ilyin, as in 1937, his brother Igor, who had remained in Russia, was executed for counter-revolutionary activity, and the following year he was forbidden from giving any speeches or distributing any writings, the Gestapo seizing all published copies of his works. So yeah, in Russia he's being persecuted he's being persecuted at the hands of the communists, the Bolsheviks. In Germany, he's being persecuted by the Gestapo themselves. So yeah, this guy, he just can't win. Yeah. Fearing for his safety, he found refuge in Zurich, Switzerland. There, he continued to write on various topics as the Second World War came and went, chief among them the tasks of the Russian diaspora, which would need to rebuild the country when the Soviet system inevitably collapsed. He also made a clear-eyed assessment of the nature of the fascist phenomenon, listing all the ideological and moral pitfalls which Hitler's regime had fallen into, those which he was hopeful that Francisco Franco of Spain and Antonio Salazar of Portugal would avoid, largely because their own anti-communism was underlined by a firm Christian conviction. It was on such convictions that he hoped a future Russia would be based. Halfway through writing a book on monarchy, Ilyin died after a heart attack in Zollikon near Zurich on the 21st of December, 1953. He was survived by his wife for a further 9 years. Okay, and then they're going to go talking about his Russian thought. I'll skip some of these pages right here. This one's talking about the context of his work. But yeah, so what's interesting is that Ivan Ilyin and I are basically pretty similar in this regard. Basically, you could say monarcho-fascists. Yeah, because I'd say a better alternative for the right-wing movement would be something more of Francisco Franco than a silly German mustache man who led Germany to destruction. Ooh, I offended some so-called right-winger out there. But yeah, Francisco Franco, like I'd say, was a better alternative to this. And Spain remained, by the way, post-World War II, a right-wing country. Just saying. And then some ungrateful leaders would screw that up later in the 1970s. But Francisco Franco, super Roman Catholic, very pro-monarchy, super right-wing, super anti-communist, destroyer of communists, nightmare of the communists, while at the same time not falling into the ideologies of National Socialism and their cringe pagan revivalism that they would promote everywhere, and their own persecution of Christians, which a lot of modern-day National Socialists don't talk about, but like they're fully paganistic. Like basically most of them are basically pagans. Like the vast majority are pagans. So, and just like German Mustache Man, who wanted to revive this Germanic paganism, well, yeah, so like I'm more on board with Ivan Ilyin here, where Francisco Franco's ideology is probably more preferable for someone who would identify as far right. And many, by the way, just a quick note before I actually get into the actual first chapter, there were many white guard emigres who escaped Russia. They would end up in Spain, and as military guys, they would continue their service for the Spanish government. And then when the Spanish Civil War happened, many of them fought for Francisco Franco. And Franco's personal pilot was a Russian. He served in the First World War, and then he fought during the Russian Civil War, and then he fought in the Spanish Civil War, and he ended up being Franco's pilot during the Spanish Civil War. And then there were several Russian White Guard units who, while living in Spain, decided, well, you know what, like, let's just continue fighting the communists. If we could not stop them at our home country, well, at least let's try to stop them here at our new country in Spain. So let's help the Spanish people resist the communists. And the fascists won. The right wing won. The actual right wing, not the pagan right wing of German Mustache Man. But yeah, so okay. So we got translator's notes. Not going to read that. Then there's a preface. Let's skip that. And chapter 1, it's called Introduction, by the way, but it's actually just chapter 1. What's interesting, chapter 2 is called On Resistance to Evil, but tonight we're just doing chapter 1. Okay. Also, before I continue, just please send in your donations through Streamlabs. If you guys have any super chats, please send them in. Truly appreciate this. So yeah, Streamlabs link should be available. Click on the Streamlabs and send in your chats. Okay, introduction, chapter 1. In suffering, humanity is wise. Ignorance leads him to trials and torments, and through agony the soul is purified and sees through a clear-sighted gaze. The source of wisdom is given in the form of clarity. But the first condition of mastery is honesty in the face of God, with oneself and with the issues. Can a man striving for moral perfection resist the evil with force and the sword? Can a man who believes in God, accepting his universe and his place in this world, refuse to resist the evil by the sword and force? Here lies a dual issue, which now requires a new formulation and a new resolution. In the present especially, for the first time and as never before, because it is fruitless to decipher the question of evil without having experienced true evil, and to our generation the experience of evil is one possessing a special strength, for the first time and as never before. As a result of a long brewing process, evil has now managed to free itself from all internal divisions and external obstacles, show its face, spread its wings, utter its goals, muster its forces, realize its ways and means. Moreover, it has openly legitimated itself, formulated its dogmas with canons, praised its own no longer hidden disposition, and revealed to the world its spiritual nature. Nothing equivalent or equal to this has been seen in the history of humanity, at least as far as it can be remembered. It is the first time a genuine evil has been given to the human spirit with such frankness, and it is understandable that in the light of this new reality, many problems of spiritual culture and philosophy, especially those that are directly related to the ideas of good and evil, are filled with new content, gain new meaning, are highlighted in new ways, and require a substantive revision. And above all, there is the moral and practical, and in fact profound religious metaphysical question about resistance to evil, about the correct, necessary, and worthy ways of this resistance. This question must be posed and resolved philosophically, as a question which requires a mature spiritual experience, a thoughtful framing, and an impartial verdict. For this, it is first of all necessary to abandon the premature and hasty conclusions with reference to one's personality, to its past actions and future ways. The researcher should not proceed his research with frightening possibilities or prospects. He should not rush to judge his own past or allow someone else's condemnation to penetrate into the depths of his heart. Whatever the final answer to the question, it cannot be practically uniform or identical for all. The naivete of all the equalizing abstract morality has long been recognized in philosophy, and to demand that everyone always resist evil by force, or that no one ever resist evil by force, is meaningless. Only an undaunted, free spirit can approach the problem honestly, sincerely, and keenly, thinking everything over and arriving at a conclusion without hiding as a coward, and simplifying, not speaking in words of an affected virtue, and not encircling himself with fierce gestures. The whole question is deep, sophisticated, and complex, and thus any simplification here is harmful and fraught with false conclusions and theories. All vagueness is dangerous in theory and in fact, as every cowardice distorts the formula of the question, every bias distorts the formula of the answer. But this is why it is necessary to renounce once and for all that formulation of the question which was pushed with such blind persistence and gradually poured into philosophically unsophisticated souls by Count L. Tolstoy, his companions, and his disciples. Starting from a purely personal, substantively shallow, and untested experience of love and evil, prejudging depth and breadth of the question itself, cutting down the freedom of its moral vision through purely personal aversions and preferences without subjecting any of the spiritual content, violence, evil, religiosity, to careful analysis, without mentioning any bedrock principle and hastening with a categorical response. This group of moralizing publicists incorrectly posed the question and incorrectly solved it, and then, with passion often reaching anger, defended its incorrect resolution of the wrong question as a revealed truth. And since the material of history, biology, psychology, ethics, politics, and the whole spiritual culture did not fit into rational schemas and formulas which claimed universal importance were not reconciled with exceptions, then, naturally, there followed the selection of suitable material and the rejection of inappropriate material and the lack of the first was made up for by artistically convincing constructions. A naively idyllic view of the human being was preached, and the black abysses of history and the human heart were evaded and hushed up. The wrong survey of good and evil was made. The heroes treated as villains, the weak-willed, the timid, the hypochondriac, the patriarchally moribund, and the uncivilized were exalted as virtuous. Sincere naivete was alternated with deliberate paradoxes. Objections were dismissed as sophistries. Dissenters and unconvinced people were declared by others to be vicious, corrupt, self-serving hypocrites. All the power of personal gifts possessed by Tolstoy himself and the totally fanatical limitations of his followers became a spiritual imposition of their mistakes upon others and the spreading of their own delusions into a great many souls. And it is natural that the doctrine legitimatizing weakness, exalting egocentrism, indulging a lack of will, robbing the soul of its social and civic duties, and much more, the tragic burden of the universe would have been successful among people and would have promoted, especially in those who were stupid, weak-willed, uneducated, and prone to simplifying, in a naively idyllic world outlook. So it happened that the teaching of Count Leo Tolstoy and his followers attracted the weak and simple-hearted people, and imparting a counterfeit facade into the spirit of Christ's teaching, poisoned Russian religious and political culture. Russian philosophy must expose every inch of this unnoticed nest of seasoned infiltration and ideological mistakes, and try to once and for all remove from it all the ambiguities and naivete, all cowardice and predilection. This is her religious, scientific, and patriotic vocation, to help the weak to see and grow from strength to strength in certainty and wisdom. End of chapter 1. Okay. So guys, okay, just checking the mic levels. Yeah, so chapter 1, there are some jabs here at Tolstoy, and no surprise there. Tolstoy became a pacifist, and not just a pacifist. He eventually became more of a heretical pacifist. He is teaching Christian pacifism. So rather than just being personally, as an individual, a pacifist, just interested in living out his days peacefully, not being involved in any political scandals, not being interested or supporting any wars, just living his life on his farm and being humble, Tolstoy instead would kind of just promote this idea that like Christians just must all be pacifists, they must all be like him, rather than just him being individually a pacifist himself. But instead he started like this teaching, this following basically, and a lot of his fans, his fanatics, they're basically just creeping into Russian society, and like they, I guess you could say, they believe the teaching that I don't know if it's Pelagianism or that all people are good, but then something makes them evil, right? And then correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if that's Pelagianism, but I think it is. I think it's Pelagianism. But so Tolstoy's followers, they kind of were basically just teaching this idea of weakness, how like evil doesn't have to be overcome by any force at all. And so, and Ivan Ilyin is obviously resisting this ideology, this Tolstoy style approach to defeating evil. Yeah, so that's basically like the first reading of this book on resistance to evil by force by Ivan Alexandrovich Ilyin. So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's discussion. Here's the book right here. You could definitely find it on Amazon or thrift books, and then there's other bookstores online. They sell this book. It's right here. There we go, right there in the camera. And I would say this is more this cover right here. I would say this is more of the 2018 cover. I doubt this is the 1920s or 1970s edition. This is definitely the 2018. Yeah, this is definitely the 2018 cover right here, especially with this guy with his rifle. Looks like an AK probably. It's probably an AK. It's hard to tell with the graphic, but yeah, I think that's an AK right there. Yeah. So yeah, like this cover is definitely probably 2018 cover, and look at the quality right here. That's the whole reading for tonight. If you guys want to help support the channel, and there's just a regular chat in the live chat. Let me see if there are any top chats. Nope, no super chats, nothing. Okay, well, yeah, if you guys want to donate, go to the link. It says Streamlabs. That's the link right there. And if you want to buy the merch, you could always go to my other videos, not my live videos, but my regular videos that are pre-recorded, and they have the links to the merch store. So support the channel through there if you want to buy some merchandise for yourself. Yeah, but if you guys just want to donate, the link should be in the description and in the chat area. So Streamlabs, go to there and send a donation. And also, don't forget to just like, share, subscribe, share this video with your friends, family. God bless you guys. You have a good night.